Good evening, everybody. My name is Donna Herdsman, and I have the pleasure and honour of being your MC tonight. I would like to welcome all of you to the PwC UK Alumni Live Event 2019. On behalf of us all, I'd like to thank the organisers for providing us with this wonderful opportunity to come together as part of the overall PwC UK Alumni Network. Above all, we have been provided with an opportunity to connect, to reconnect, and to reflect on the fact that no matter how challenging our lives are, we have an opportunity to make things better together. To quote the wonderful Nelson Mandela, "There is no passion to be found in settling for a life that is less than one is capable of living." We hope that you will, of course, tweet throughout the evening using our hashtags. Hashtag PwC UK Alumni and hashtag Your Network for Life. So, we have some wonderful speakers with us tonight, and I'm delighted to welcome the PwC UK Chairman and Senior Partner, Kevin Ellis, to the stage to say a few words.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone here in person and all those joining us on live stream. It's fantastic to have us all together. Over the course of this evening and in the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes, we're going to hear 4 inspiring and unique stories from 4 of our alumni about how they, in their lives, have influenced positive change. I know everyone in the room has a story, and really the networking event this evening is about sharing those stories of the PwC family as a network. PwC today has 900 partners in the UK, 22,000 staff, and across the globe we now have 270,000 staff in 157 countries. That is a fantastically powerful network, but made more powerful by those that have gone before. Every year in the UK, 4,000 people join us from schools, from universities, apprenticeships, and experienced hires, but also 4,000 people leave us, strengthening this amazing family of the alumni. When I speak to our clients, when I speak to politicians, when I speak to the media, and I say that we're in touch with 60,000 active alumni, you can see the surprise. I normally then go on to say, and I know you'll know at least 10 of them. And after a few seconds, I normally say, no, it's probably close to 20. We have a powerful alumni. That is a huge strength for us as a firm, and we really value it. But I really hope you value it too. The fact you're here this evening, the fact you're still in touch with us, I think shows that you value what it says on the screen behind me. This is your network for life. It's of value to you as much as it's value to us. Thanks for joining us. I'll pass you back to our MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So, I start by asking you all a question. How many of you grew up watching Star Trek, Lost in Space, Star Wars, and Stargate, to name but a few space-related programs? Hands up. Me too. And dreamt of space travel, but believing that it could never happen to you, or in fact to anyone you know, as we would boldly be going where no one has gone before. Now, more than any other time, space travel for the many, as opposed to the few, may be in reach in our lifetime. Is it something you dream of for yourself? Being forever curious, I have watched Apollo 13, one of my favourite films, but having said that, I'm not sure that I'd want to go to space. But if you knew someone who might get to space ahead of us, I wonder what they would want us to know. Well, let's find out. I'd like to invite Andy to share with us Space to Dream.
Ever since I was younger, I've always wanted to be an astronaut, and that is something that's lived through my whole life. Since I started working, I've strived to work on projects that really matter. Projects that are right at the heart of us, solving the biggest problems that we face as humanity all across the globe. Something that I've done over the past year is develop a series of sustainability goals for the moon, and these are modelled on the goals we have for Earth set by the United Nations. You might not realise it, but space actually does so much to help us on planet Earth. Helps us tackle problems, but also helps us go about our normal everyday lives. And the great thing about working in the space industry is seeing how space science and space technology is really enabling us to make a difference all over the globe. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to stay in a habitat like the one behind, on the moon or maybe onto Mars, and be able to live as an astronaut representing Earth in space.
Good evening. I left PwC to become an astronaut. As diverse as the training is at PwC, it's very, very diverse. I couldn't quite find the online training platform that allowed me to pursue this ambition. There's a lot of risk in leaving a job that I left. Way before you even consider the prospects of traveling at 17,500 kilometers an hour to escape Earth's orbit and go into space. Being an astronaut is not an easy feat at all. If we look at the numbers, only 562 people have ever been to space, right, in the last 60 years of human spaceflight. And that's going beyond the Kármán line, this 100-kilometer line that divides us on Earth from outer space. Of that number, of that 562, only 52 of them have been European. Yeah? Supported by ESA, the European Space Agency, and their program, and the program that came before that, the program that Helen Sharman, for instance, was part of, as part of the Russian Intercosmos program. Now, of those 52, 2 were British. Yeah? Helen Sharman, who I just mentioned, and also Tim Peake, who most of you will know in the room, who went on board the ISS in 2012. So you could say that with those 2 astronauts, I probably had a better chance of being an astronaut than being on the throne of England in the last 60 years. So maybe the odds are in my favor. But like I said, it's not easy to go to space. It's not an opportunity that comes up every day. It's not a regular job listing that you'll find on a job board. The last selection process was in 2008 and 2009, and the next selection process is likely going to be towards the end of next year, early 2021. That'll be a selection process for up to 6 European astronauts as part of the European Space Agency program. And this is a selection process that I've been training for over the past year, learning a variety of skills and education that will support me on my application. This is elements like microgravity science and how we conduct experiments in space, to understanding things like orbital mechanics and how space operates, but also the complexities of mission operations and design. So a broad range of skills that an astronaut needs in order to do their job. And I'm recently moving into a role with the European Space Agency within their Human Spaceflight and Robotic Exploration program in the Netherlands in their Science and Technology Center to kind of further this aim and this ambition. Why go to space? It's certainly a question that I get asked a lot as somebody who is so interested and involved in the sector. And indeed, there are huge problems on Earth that we should look to tackle too. But it's not one or the other. There's a lot that we do in space that dramatically benefits life on Earth. The way we go about our everyday lives through communication and transport is enabled by space, through things like GPS. We do more accurate weather monitoring through space-like satellites. We're able to look at the planet in a completely new way by seeing it through our Earth observation data. That allows us to understand really the effects that we've had on our climate for the first time really in the last 50 years, and be able to take the right kind of steps to address climate change, the most pressing topic of our time. We're able to develop spin-offs because working in space and space exploration is right at the forefront of what we as humanity are capable of. So we're pushing the boundary of material science, of other areas like how we cooperate and communicate in space. But there are also less tangible reasons why we go to space. We want to understand more about our origins of a species. How did we come about to live? What is our home and what is our place in the universe? Yeah? How can we conduct science experiments in space without the presence of gravity? And what does that tell us from a molecular level? but also other things, like how do we cooperate in space? Yeah? International cooperation has been a real triumph for space in a time when countries have not always been the best of allies on Earth as well. So there are huge advantages for going to space. But the one that I want to talk to you about today is really a cultural rationale, is the main reason why I want to go. So humanity has long had a history of going to space. It's long had a history of exploration, of going way beyond what is possible. We all have an innate kind of passion for wanting to understand more about the world around us. And that's why we've walked on land, we've traveled across water, we've flown. And now in space, we've been to space, we've walked in space, we've lived in space. But now we want to settle in space and create a sustainable presence in space for the first time since we've been there, which was in 1972. It's very important that we go to the moon because it serves as a very good platform for us to go to Mars, which is the closest point in the solar system where we believe there's a high chance of life. The moon is relatively very close to the Earth compared to Mars, so it enables us to actually go and send things to the moon and create a testing environment. So a way that we can test what the stresses would be like, the psychological stresses, the physical stresses, what actually is necessary in order to have a 2 or 3 year mission to Mars. We can do that from the moon. But also it's cheaper to send things from the moon to Mars. The moon has an environment that's 1/100th of the Earth. It has a gravity 1/6 of the Earth, which means the propellant needed to send a rocket from the moon to Mars is way less than what it costs to go from the Earth. Okay, so these are real big rationales for why we want to go to the moon. And what I've done over the last year is put together, working with space agencies and actors all over the world, a consolidated roadmap which sets out a 5-phase approach and how we can actually develop a settlement to be on the moon, right? This is really the next step. And NASA wants to go back to the moon by 2024 in the Artemis program, the sister of Apollo. So this will enable us to actually have that sustained presence in space that we've been missing, beyond low Earth orbit and our current role in space in the International Space Station. So this roadmap sets out how we can traverse from a small robotic-based settlement, a little bit like we have in Antarctica for conducting science, through to actually having a society that can thrive and live, yeah, and have all the emotions that we have on Earth but in space. One thing that's going to be very important if we go and when we go is that we do it in the right way. Sustainability is a word that's used a lot, but it really is important in space that we consider sustainability. We need to consider sustainability both in terms of environmental sustainability, ensuring that we take the lessons from how we've affected life on Earth. Yeah, we've not necessarily been the best as a species at protecting our own planet. And these are lessons that we need to learn when we go and move to other celestial bodies like the moon as well. So how can we make sure that we protect the lunar environment, the moon being such an important cultural heritage significance for Earth? And also important, if we broaden the definition of sustainability, is making sure that we can continue to go back, that what we do today does not affect future generations. And this is one of the big criticisms of the Apollo program. And the reason why we haven't been back since 1972 is that the Apollo program did not leave behind the infrastructure that allows us to return to the moon. It was a very expensive program, a space race between 2 countries, but has not given us the platform to be able to go back. And that's what we need to make sure we do right today. We need to make sure that when we go, we leave the infrastructure that allows other people, other actors, other countries to go as well. And this is why sustainability is so important. And to this note, this is why I have developed a series of sustainability goals as part of a team at the International Space University and in conjunction with the European Space Agency, 15 sustainable development goals, which are like the UN Sustainable Development Goals that set out how we should use the moon, and they provide guidelines for all space actors. And one of the cool things we're going to do with that is we've built a hydrogen plane, which is a kind of like a green fuel alternative to fossil fuel planes. We're going to fly that to remote communities, such as a community in Greenland, and we're going to talk to them about what sustainability means. Because for them, like areas like northern Greenland, where they have small kind of Inuit communities of like, say, 2,000 people, sustainability is part and parcel of day-to-day life, right? So we want to make sure that their views and we get their insights as part of our work. Now, one of the things I want to get across to you before I leave the stage today is that in order to do some of these things I've talked about, to go back to the moon, to go to Mars, we're going to need everybody's involvement in that, right? There'll be many different backgrounds and experiences in this room, and I'll give you some examples. If we're going to go to Mars on a 2 or 3 year mission, that's probably minimum about two years, depending on when we set sail, we're going to need to look at the psychological stresses that come from the isolation, from the confinement, from the darkness of space. So we need psychologists to help us develop the kind of tests and programs to evaluate some of these stresses. and make sure that the astronauts that go are trained and able to do it. We need scientists to help us with medicine and actually understand how we can conduct medicine without communications from Earth. How can we respond to emergency health scenarios in an environment where we could have a lag of up to 46 to 90 minutes delay between Mars and the Earth? So how do we make sure we do proactive monitoring, but also do surgical procedures in space if they are needed? We need architects to design the kind of habitats that not only defend us from the harsh environment of space, like radiation, but also enable astronauts to be able to live and thrive in space, to be environments like a home away from home. We need data scientists, I'm sure there's one or two of you at least in this room, to help us analyze all this data that we're getting from space, to understand it more, to create more intelligent robots that can go and do automated locomotion in space. We have so much Earth observation data we get every single day. We need to get meaning from this data. And data science is a great way that we can do knowledge discovery. We can learn more about the universe without the constraints of human knowledge. So these are just an example of some of the roles that we all need to play in order to get this collective vision. And I want to leave you with a final point. So my journey into space hasn't been the typical one. I started off studying economics. I did a Bachelor of Science. I moved to work at IBM and PwC. I left PwC and did a Master's in Space Science and Technology, and now working at the European Space Agency. Hasn't necessarily been the most sort of straightforward path of maybe a test pilot or an engineer or a scientist, the kind of traditional routes into space. But I'm able to every day kind of be out there achieving kind of and working towards what I wanted to do from as a very small age. Yeah, being able to fulfill a childish dream. And I say childish with intent because really it has two meanings, two separate connotations. The first connotation is sort of like or similar, right, as appropriate to a child. The second connotation says it's kind of silly, immature. It's a childish thing to do. And I think for the longest time, for me, working in space, it was always the latter. It was going to be a silly, childish thing. It was immature. It was not something that was possible. I think we've all had that feeling about certain things in life. But then over time, and especially over the last year, I started to realize that actually it's not so much the latter thing at all. It's more the former thing, that my thoughts are kind of similar to a child. Yeah? They're appropriate. It's behavior that a child would have. I think I can go to space. Yeah, I'm young. Okay, is that such a bad thing? Yeah, is it such a bad thing that a young child who hasn't been tarnished with self-doubt, knocked back by failure, decided that it's just not the right thing, somebody else can do it? That's what a child thinks, because a child is inquisitive, they have eyes open for wonder, and they think they can do it. Yeah. But most importantly, they take that through their life until they get to a point where they're just told it's not possible. You have a motto here at PwC which says, reimagine the possible. And although it might just seem like a corporate slogan, it really resonates with me. And that's because that's something that I feel like I've been able to do over the past few years. Really reimagine what's possible. And I want you to all take a moment in this room to think about that in your everyday lives. See if you can rekindle the fire inside you that I had within me from a young child. And I want you to have space to dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. There can be nothing lost, I think, in daring to dream and finding our passion. As I think Andy has demonstrated, both we and the universe can only benefit when we so do. Nevertheless, I think it's quite ironic that as we think about space, we cannot lose sight of the need for us to focus on doing all we can to protect and improve our environment. Time is running out for us to act and to halt the ongoing damage. There is an American proverb which goes as follows: we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it for our children. Let's hear from Jessica, therefore, on what we can all do for ourselves and thus for our children to protect our environment in her talk, Our Planet and Investing for Tomorrow.
My name's Jessica Fries and I run the Prince of Wales's Accounting for Sustainability project. I've been working for the Prince now for about 10 years and my role really brings together my passion for sustainable business and the role that we can play individually and as society in tackling things like climate change. Climate change is one of the biggest challenges that we face as society, and we have really limited amount of time to act. It's an issue that's already starting to impact society and individual lives, and that impact is only going to increase over the coming decades. The core focus of my talk is how our money and how we use our money and invest our money can help to tackle climate change. Creating sustainable business and having a role to play in creating a sustainable world, that's the thing that really motivates me, and that's what I really love to be recognised for. "10 years ago, I learnt to curtsy. Now, it wasn't the kind of curtsy that when I learnt ballet, many, many years before that, I thought it was. I'll come back to that later. I was standing there in the office of Sir Michael Peat, who was the Prince of Wales's principal private secretary, and his PA, Susie, ran into the room. I'd just started my secondment from PwC, working for His Royal Highness, running accounting for sustainability. And she said to me, "Has anyone told you what you need to do if you meet the Prince of Wales?" A couple of days in, no one had told me. And so she very quickly taught me how to curtsy. I was petrified. When I saw her curtsy, I thought there was quite a high chance that I was going to fall over whilst doing it. Now, hundreds of curtsies later, I still haven't, I think I'll cross my fingers, there's not any wood very handy, I haven't fallen over, although maybe there's a chance later this evening. Of course, the reason why I went to work for His Royal Highness and I was so excited by that opportunity a decade ago was because of the potential to have a real impact on the world. One of the things that His Royal Highness said when he first started accounting for sustainability, which was back in 2004, was focused on the role that accountants play. Now, I'm going to read out a quote from him, and I'm going to read it from a piece of paper because if I misquote, I wouldn't want to risk getting my head chopped off. "There was a time when we could say that there was either a complete lack of knowledge or at least room for doubt about the consequences for our planet of our actions. That time has gone. We now know all too clearly what we're actually doing and that we need to do something about it urgently. Better accounting must be part of that process." Now, as an accountant qualified with PwC and having worked in the sustainability consulting area since qualification, that really inspired me. A way that through my accounting skills, I could really have an impact on all of our futures, or at least try to. And of course, climate change is something that has really been in the news. Greta Thunberg, the amazing 16-year-old schoolgirl from Sweden, has really started a global movement of climate strikes. We've had Extinction Rebellion, bringing London to a halt. And the words are starting to shift. People are starting to talk about and recognise that we face a climate emergency. When I learnt to curtsy 10 years ago, that seems like yesterday. So 10 years is not a long time. And that's how long we've got to act on climate change. And we need to radically transform our world. We've already induced 1 degree of warming above pre-industrial levels. And scientists tell us that we need to do everything that we can to halt that rise in global average temperatures to 1.5 degrees. Half a degree may not seem much, but if you think about it, we're already starting to experience some of those impacts today. Last summer, it was the hottest on record in England. And although there are many advantages from working in a palace, and you saw some of them in that video clip, air conditioning is not one of them, I can promise you. It reflects fairly accurately the outside temperature inside, no matter how many fans you try to turn on to cool things down. And of course, living in Victorian housing, the temperature in the evenings at home wasn't much better. But that's minor compared to some of the impacts that people around the world are already facing. One of the things that really struck home to me when I first started working for A4S, and in the early days, was speaking on a panel with the climate negotiator from the Philippines. And the panel, as you can imagine, was talking about climate change, what we could do about it, the role of finance. And at the end of that panel session, as often is the case, we were all asked to stand up and smile for the photographer. He wanted to capture a picture of the panelists. Now, that same day, one of the most terrible typhoons had hit the Philippines, Typhoon Haiyan. That resulted in 6,000 people dead, millions displaced and homeless. Of course, huge human and, of course, financial impact. When he was asked to smile, he said to the photographer, "I can't. I don't know where my team is. I don't know if they're alive or dead." That really struck me to the core and underlined just how much we need to redouble our efforts to try and tackle climate change. But it's one of those issues that is incredibly hard, I think, even though it's something I work on every day, thinking about what we can do as individuals. It seems really an insurmountable problem. And one of the things that struck me really recently, speaking to one of the Scandinavian financial services sector organisations, is actually there is one thing, one pretty simple thing that we can all do. They had done some research to look at the things that had the biggest impact on our footprint. They highlighted 5 actions that we can take. One was 2 minutes less in the shower. Another, well, I guess it depends whether you're in the middle of a heat wave or not, whether you want to go for that one. Another was eating meat just once a day. That's something else that I think has been covered quite a lot in the news. Taking trains instead of driving. 1 less international flight a year. But it was the 5th thing that really struck me, and that was the one that they found had 27 times more impact than the other 4 added together. And that was making sure that your pension is invested in sustainable funds. We all have pensions, and that really underlined to me just how much our money matters. And the other thing that struck me is all of those other options, and I think this is one of the challenges tackling climate change. A lot of it feels like it's giving something up, which isn't always easy to do. This is an option where there really is a win-win. It's about choosing to do something that is positive and will have positive impact without having to give something up. Through our work, I've seen more and more research underlining that the sustainable fund doesn't have to mean financial sacrifice. And in fact, in many cases, it's actually the stronger financial option, particularly in the longer term. So this is something that we can all do. Now again, financing our future seems like something complex. How do you choose between the different funds? How do you really make some of those decisions? For many people, the world of finance, and even though I'm an economist, I'm an accountant, when I look at those different funds, it's still something that isn't easy to really work out what the right answer is. But there's one simple thing that we can do, and that's get in touch with our pension fund provider. Ask them what they're doing. How much are they really protecting some of those funds and investments from climate change? Are they looking at the risks, and how are they building that into the investments? And for those of you in the room who have influence on what the pension choices of employees in your organisations are, is the default fund the sustainable one? Others are going in that direction. Is that something you could do too? So I'd ask you all to take one action after today, and that's send that simple email. have that kind of impact and influence, and then make sure your funds are sustainable. Now, I promised that I would come back to curtsying. It's as simple, that email, as learning to curtsy. Now, hopefully I won't fall over, because otherwise this could all go terribly wrong. Now, when I first learnt to curtsy as a young girl for my ballet lessons, it was more of that. But actually, if you ever have the pleasure of meeting His Royal Highness or another member of the royal family, and I have to say this is only valid for a selection of the audience, because just to remind everyone, it's women who curtsy and men do a little bow. It's more of a bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And I think Jessica's talk in particular means for me the need for me to think about my mindset, to begin to change and proactively plan to live my life, and therefore hopefully you're going to do the same by ensuring, in fact, that there is a world that can sustain us and future generations to come. Because I think, I think about retirement and I just assume everything I want to do, I'll be able to do. And I think what Jessica is highlighting is that we can make a real difference right here, right now, to make sure those dreams of what tomorrow may be like for us actually can be fulfilled. Right, so we have a short video now. And, for me, when the team showed me the video, it made me feel extremely proud to belong to and be part of this wonderful network. And therefore, the essence of that video, I think, is to remind all of us of how important this network is to us all. Okay, so you'll be glad to know, maybe, we've got 2 more speakers to go. But before we do that, because I know you've been sat down now for over half an hour, we thought you might like to have a little stretch. But because we are a proactive network, of course you've got to do something, you've got to do a little bit of work. But hopefully it'll be a bit of fun. So anyone that saw the pictures from last year, I think one of the best pictures was when we had the entire auditorium moving. So we're going to ask you to do some moves today, but nothing too strenuous. Trust me. And I am going to demonstrate first, so I'm going to be vulnerable. So I want you to imagine that I am your mirror. Yes, I can see you all laughing. You'll all be fine. You can sit. I'm going to demonstrate first, and I'm going to ask you to stand up, and I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I wouldn't. That's one of the things I learned when I was at PwC, and it stayed with me forever. So this is going to be what I'm going to ask you to do. Ready? Okay. So, are we ready? Team, up. Oh, look, the energy's gone up already. Right, I'm going to go sideways. Right, just imagine I'm your mirror, yes? So, I'm going to count you in. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah! It's so good. I think we're going to do it again. You were so good. We're going to do it again. Right. Right, ready? Oh, isn't that, energy's up, that's great, which is good. As we move into our next speaker. So, of course, you know, given where we are today in the world, we have to have something that includes technology. So technology, as we all know, has become an integral part of our lives. And discussions continue at pace on the impact of AI and removing bias, negative consequences of social media for us all, and of course, that topic of privacy, to name but a few areas. It is right for us to be concerned about such issues and to be ready to contribute to the debate and to shape the future. On a personal note, I know the richness of some of my relationships, especially with family and friends who live overseas, has been enhanced in a way I could not have anticipated by the never-ending accessibility enabled by technology. In her talk, Amplify the Connection, Shamila will provide us with an insight of how technology is enriching both her life and those of her family. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
My name is Shamila Kailasam, and I own and run my own business, Pan-Sophia Associates. What I do is I create a safe space for people to reconnect with their brilliance and to be able to understand other people's brilliance. The key thread all the way through the rich and varied jobs that I worked on was my love of working with people and developing them. And I had this secret dream all of that time of becoming a coach and or working in training. And I didn't think it was possible until around my 40th birthday when I realised that I could retrain myself and give it a go. So I did. I would like to be known for being able to enable people to have richer relationships with each other. The core focus of my talk is how technology can enable human connection.
Imagine being told that your 3-week-old daughter can't hear your voice. My name is Shamila Kailasam, and I'm going to be talking to you about how technology can impact human connection. I left PwC in 2015 to start my own business, delivering leadership development for my clients. Connection was often a topic that came up, partly because it's the cornerstone of leadership. Leaders need to connect to their clients, to their colleagues, and to do both, they come to me so that they can better connect to themselves. Up until February of this year, I thought I really understood the topic, and then something happened that completely shifted and deepened my understanding. So, what is human connection? How does technology impact it? And what was my shift? I'm sure we've all experienced a deep connection with another human being. It can happen in a fraction of a second. We feel heard. We feel seen. We feel like they know us and we know them. Physically, our heartbeats synchronize, and crucially, so do our brainwaves. important neural pathways are strengthened, and we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. As we nurture those connections, they can transcend time and distance, and we can even feel connected to those that have passed on, or to people we may have never met before through their creations such as art, music, books. Connections create families and communities and even nations. In fact, connections create our entire world. So what of technology? We often hear that technology negatively impacts connection. In fact, we use it as an excuse to disconnect from each other. I'm sure we've all experienced trying to have a conversation with somebody that's looking at their mobile phone or another screen, and how that makes you feel. I know I get quite annoyed, and as an adult, that's quite common. However, for children and babies, it's a different matter. Studies have shown that when adults try to connect with them without their full attention, their neural pathways, the baby's neural pathways, weaken. So I find that quite frightening. However, it doesn't have to be that way at all. And I have a story of how technology has done the exact opposite for me and my family. So in February, I became the mother to these two cuties, two baby girls. And now they've got very different personalities. Padmini is the eldest by 1 minute. And she is vivacious, and she engages with the world all the time. She laughs and giggles at absolutely everyone and everything. That includes me, her dad, the cat, her sister, the sofa, the cushions, I mean, absolutely everything. Her sister, Dara Lakshmi, is much more reserved. She likes to look deeply into people's eyes. And when she looks into mine, I feel like I'm the only person in the world. And when she smiles, which is rarer than her sister, she brightens up the whole room. 3 weeks after they were born, Dara Lakshmi was diagnosed with a moderate hearing loss. And I was heartbroken to think that she couldn't access the world in the same way that I can, her father can, and her twin sister can. I also realised that though she could hear quite a lot of the surrounding world, she couldn't hear my voice unless I was holding her close, which meant when I put her down, or when I was just out of her eyesight, she couldn't hear me call her name to soothe her. So that meant she must have felt alone. Luckily, we live in the UK, and we have access to the amazing NHS, and within a few short weeks of being diagnosed, she was given these little tiny hearing aids. And when they were fitted, she was asleep, obviously, and she wasn't really that bothered. And then she woke up, and her whole face was different. Her eyes were wider than I've ever seen them before. And she was just totally excited, and I could feel her saying, wow. Obviously, she can't talk, but you know. It was just amazing. On the way home, we took the bus, and her sister was fast asleep, as most babies would be, but Dara Lakshmi's eyes were wide open, and they were almost sticking out on stalks as she tracked everything that she heard and saw. When we got home that day, she followed my voice around the room, and she was ridiculously happy. And I realised that she must know that when I'm out of sight, I'm still there with her. When her dad got home and he spoke to her, she reacted in a completely different way. And we were really emotional, so we thought, okay, maybe this is the first time she's heard her dad's voice. So these little tiny hearing aids have given her a completely different sensory experience of our world. Hearing has given her the ability to understand that she's not alone and to connect to the people that truly love her. at the connection to our little baby has been amplified by this technology and by the amazing people that have designed and fitted it. Amazingly, when we take out the hearing aids, her brain still interprets, for a very short period of time, the world as if they were still in. And that's because of the deep connections she makes when she's wearing them. So she is now going to grow up with a choice to be in the hearing world, or a choice to be in a slightly quieter world. Now that's a great choice to have, and a great advantage to have, particularly when I'm singing. She also has the ability to connect her sister to a different world. And her sister, Padmini, will now be able to experience this slightly quieter world and this much louder world through her baby sister. So you see, technology has not only connected us as a family, but it's also connected two different worlds. And this experience has made me realize that we don't have to be slaves to our technology, like some in the media may have us believe. We have a choice. We can choose to use it to amplify our connections in our lives. We can, more importantly, choose to influence those who design technology by making a choice to use it to amplify connections. They will inevitably be influenced to make technology more focused on human connection. So, I urge you all today to use the technology in all of your hands to amplify the connections in your lives. And what I mean by that is, add a different sensory experience to your communications. So, make a voice call, or even better, a video call to somebody that you would normally text. Send out a picture or a video of something meaningful to you to a connection that you want to deepen. Or just tweet something that might enhance everybody's experience. Together, we can make connections brighter and more visual for everyone. Technology gives us the access to make connections we never thought possible. So please amplify your connection. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Shamila. It is for all of us, I think, to ensure that the positivity of technology is harnessed now and for always. So I've got a question, actually. How many of you have heard that saying, perception is reality? Hands up. Yes, I've heard it. I've heard it too. But I've come to realise that my perception sometimes is of very little value. And let me explain why. So when I was 30 and I was working for Coopers & Lybrand, I had the privilege of supporting a young person's charity by mentoring a 16-year-old. She had decided she needed to leave her parents, her home, and move into a hostel for her own physical and mental well-being. Even though at 30, I thought I knew it all, and let's face it, I wasn't that long ago 30. I felt ill-equipped to provide any real insight, as my perception could not truly align to her reality in any possible way. So I just listened to her plans and her dreams, whilst all the time being in awe of her strength. Some 7 years later, I popped into a shop, as you do, on the way back from a client meeting, as you do, looking for a pair of shoes, of course, and there was a tap on my shoulder. And yes, you guessed it, it was the same young lady. She shared how she had completed a degree and was on the organisation's fast-track leadership programme, and she had become engaged. She then hugged me and thanked me. I replied that I had done very little, She said, "Not so," as you listened without judging me. So, as we listen to our last speaker, let's think not about how we impose our perception of reality on others, but how we can support people on their own journey of discovery through good times and the not so good times. Can we welcome Aliyu to the stage and his call to us all, further, faster, together.
My name is Aliyu, and I'm head of partnerships for a charity called the Foyer Federation. And what I do is bring together diverse people, organizations together to support young people who can't live at home. My story is of a young man who was born in Sierra Leone, and I came to this country with my young mother who was 18 at the time. I failed primary school, nearly failed secondary school, struggled through college, made it into university, and then somehow made it into the biggest accountancy firm in the world. What that story tells me is, when I haven't got a focus or a goal of what I'm trying to achieve, I'm lost in the wilderness. But at the times when I know what I want, I can be extremely bold, extremely powerful. The core focus of the talk is around young people experiencing mental health issues, but a wider issue on how do we go about not just saying we are going to help you, but how do you work with them to recognize that they have insights, strengths, and skills. I want to channel that message to the world to show them that we can do it and they are already doing it. Let's work together. Thank you, everyone. My name is Aliyu. Aliyu Fofana. It's not Alihu, it's not Alleluia, and I'm not asking you how are you. It's simply Aliyu. In 1992, I landed in London to rejoin my mother, who had me at the age of 18 in a country called Sierra Leone in Freetown. She had been doing any types of jobs, from cleaning the floor to cooking late at restaurants or being a carer, all to save up enough money to bring her young son to London. And when I look back now, after all the years I've been here, I ask myself the question, would she have done anything differently if she knew everything I would have gone through being in London? How many of you sometimes when you want to share something personal feel that it could be slightly embarrassing and hold yourself back? I want to see a show of hands. You know why, right? Because you're going to be vulnerable. You're going to put yourself out there. And that's what I'm choosing to do today with you. I want to tell you a personal story. But before I do, I want to ask you all to promise that 1, you won't judge what I'm going to say. That 2, you're going to be present with me as I speak. And that 3, you're going to listen actively. So I want you to say, yes, I promise, at the end of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. I'm going to choose to trust you. My story starts in primary school, that's where I started to taste the bitterness of failure, feeling like a loser, and feeling incapable. I remember there was one occasion where literally, in front of an audience like this, the entire school laughed at me. Weeks after, I could still hear those laughters, and I chose not to come into school for many, many days. And by the end of primary school, when I got my exam results, I saw that I failed every single exam. When I started to apply for different secondary schools, rejection, rejection, rejection. And I still remember the tears coming down as I read each of those rejection letters and felt that I was inadequate. Finally, I actually got into a secondary school because my auntie, being the woman that she is, went to her headmistress and basically forced the matter. So thank you, auntie. But because of what I'd felt in the past, even when I was there and I started to improve and get grades here which were good, I always had the belief that I was incapable. I never had the belief in myself. So then I moved on to college, I moved on to university, and there I started to apply for different jobs. And I always had to think big. I thought I need to work for one of the best. So I started applying. And then the rejections started coming in fast and furious, over and over again. But I stayed determined. And I remember once I was sitting across the seat in a final stage interview for a company which I really wanted to work with. And the partner asked me the last question as he looked through my CV. And then he looked perplexed. Hold on. How have you made it this far? Everyone else who I've interviewed has A stars and A's. You haven't even got one. I sat there, my hands literally were trembling. My palms sweating. And I looked at him thinking, oh shit. He's found me out. I'm a fraud. See, the thing about me is, I'm very mission-driven. I'm very goal-orientated. Once I know what I want, then I go after it like never before. As soon as I see that, it's mine. And that's always led me to achieving and pushing forward, regardless of the failures, but regardless of the setbacks and regardless of my past experiences. So what happened? In college, I ended up with all Bs. In university, I ended up with a first class. And then I ended working for one of the largest accountancy firms in the world, qualifying as a chartered accountant. So in my mind, I had made it. I think that deserves a round of applause. I had made it. But I want you all to look to the person next to you and say, hey, the story is not finished yet. Because the story does continue. As I started to move into different teams, I started to feel a sense of inadequacy. I was lost on where I wanted to go next, and I lost my sense of mission, my sense of goal, and what was next. And I arrived in a place where I was in a team where my strengths weren't aligned to my role. Although I still worked really hard, and I tried to remember all those good things I did back then to put in the work today in this team. But without that mission, and without my strengths aligning, I started to recall all the negative thoughts which were in my head. And what happened then? Those negative thoughts started to accumulate. Each one became a mental slash, which never healed and which stayed. As that accumulated, it became days where I didn't want to leave my bed. I literally just want to stay in bed and not go into work. But I remember reading certain quotes and watching TED Talks and thinking, no, you can't give up. You must do it. You can't be weak. You have to be strong. So I continued. I was coming into work until one day things really fell apart for me. How many of you want to be seen as weak, vulnerable, and not capable? No one, right? That's why nobody even put up their hands. They don't want to show that. And I don't want to be seen as that either. So that's why I chose not to say anything to anyone. I chose to keep it inside. But until that day where I really broke down, I went to the people who I trust the most, my parents. And I remember feeling ashamed as I sat across the table from them, about to tell them how their son felt. I kept on looking down as I spoke to them. Every so often I'll look up to see if they're going to give me a look of disapproval, a look of, I can't believe he's saying this to us. But that look never came. Instead, they just listened. They held me in that space as you're holding me now. And that gave me the chance to say so many things which I didn't even know was inside. And as I spoke, more things came out. And at the end, they said, be brave. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay, stay. But whatever you do, we love you and we'll support you. That felt like such a load, literally off my shoulders. I felt like a new man. But not a new man because I was just me, but a new man because now I felt like I was together with others who held me in that space. I'm the driver in my seat, but I had passengers now who are helping me on that journey. And that's when I realized, as human beings, we shouldn't be judged on our limitations or what we've gone through, because that doesn't define us. That is not our identity. With that new resolve, that new mindset, that started pushing me to helping others who are around me. So when I was at work, I started coaching people. I started coaching young people, and that passion continued to grow. And then one day, I grew up a bit. I grew a beard. I lost my hair. And I started working for a charity called the Foyer Federation, who are focused on helping young people who can't live at home. And one of the reasons why I joined this charity, the reason why my passion shone exactly what they were doing, I thought was the right thing, because they hold that space for young people to say, you have strengths, you have skills, and you have talent, which can provide solutions to your own problems. You have experiences which can spark change and progress. And how do we work with you and to co-create strategies of how to help you to progress? So we can be your co-pilot rather than trying to drive you. And I just felt, what a cause. The issue of mental health has been increasing in our network and for young people and people in general. Did you know that 75% of mental health issues are within a person by the age of 24? Did you know 1 in 6 young people between the ages of 16 to 24 have been diagnosed with mental health issues? And within our network, for young people who are going through certain circumstances which doesn't allow them to live at home, that 1 in 3 of them enter the network and live at a foyer have been diagnosed with a mental health issue. But in thinking about how we support them, we held that space and we worked to them and we said, how would you like support to be? What are your solutions? And they told us this. When talking about mental health, don't speak about it as if it's my identity. Speak about it as if it's my experience, and I have several different experiences that I can draw from to also help me on that journey. Ask me the question, how can I support you? So that way we can think through that together. Now, if you really reflect on what I've just said, that doesn't only apply to young people. It applies to each and every one of us. It applies to our loved ones. It applies to generations above. Because I truly believe that if we're able to hold that space with each other, where somebody can be present, that's where you start to build trust. And when you build trust, that's when you can help to battle a problem that many people fight in their minds by themselves. But you can do it together. Last week was mental health awareness. And that's when I realized that a lot of people have already started to have a mindset shift. And it made me feel good to think, yes, we're moving in the right direction. But what we need to remember is that today still, 9 in 10 people who have had mental health issues say they've been stigmatized or discriminated against because of the experience they had. So the time to act is now, and we need to move faster than ever before, considering where the world is at. Technology is moving fast. We don't know what's going to be happening with jobs. We don't even know what's happening with Brexit. So we need to make sure we stand together. So I want you to remember this one point and this key takeaway. Each of us is not perfect. Each of us have limitations. And each of us have gone through times where we've been stressed, where we've had anxiety attacks, or we've been depressed. And we've come up with our own solutions and our own strategies to cope. And I'd like to invite you all to think about that time and share it with a loved one, maybe with the person next to you or with a colleague. Share it through social media, share it through a letter, or just share it through a conversation, however you feel comfortable. And the reason why I'm asking you to do that, because it's going to show a few things. Firstly, it's going to show somebody that you've been through something, but it's going to show them that you're not weak, you're still capable, regardless of the experiences you've had, that all of us go through those experiences. And that's how we start to build the key thing, which is trust. And once trust is built, that's when we can start working together and being each other's co-pilots of fighting an issue which people normally fight by themselves. Remember this African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I want to invite you all here today to join me in going further, faster, together. Thank you.
Thank you. As a network with the power of many, let's collectively make it our aim to live life as fully as we can, to be curious about the universe, to take conscious actions that contribute to enhancing our climate, and to harness the power of technology positively. But above all, I think, to support those less fortunate than ourselves as we all move further, faster, and together. Mother Teresa stated, not all of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. So, I think you'd all like to agree with me how wonderful our speakers have been this evening. And I would like them all to join me at the front and for us all to show our appreciation in the usual way. So we have some gifts that Talia has kindly, just a small token of our appreciation. So I know we've only been together just over an hour, but believe me, this process started many, many, many weeks ago. And I think that the team have been wonderful. So I'd like you to stay there for a moment, please. So as you can imagine, it takes a village to raise a child. Hopefully you've heard that proverb. But it's also taken a lot of excellent people to organise an event like this tonight. So I'd like to call a few of them to the front. Please forgive me if I've forgotten anybody, but these are the ones that I have seen and been working with the last couple of months. So in no particular order, I'd like to call Steph to the front and Rob. So Steph and Rob have played a key role in working with our speakers. I'd like to call Talia and Tamara, without whom I'm not sure we'd have found our speakers. And finally, I'd like to call Andy to the front, because Andy is the partner that sponsors the PwC UK Alumni Network. And without his vision and the support of the rest of the firm, I don't think we'd be here today.
And just before you finish, I'd love us all just to thank Donna. I think she's been fantastic at bringing us together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just, I mean, this does take a huge amount of effort, and hopefully you can feel the care that everyone has taken to really work together and to bring these stories out. These stories exist in all of us. And I would encourage you all, if you feel like you might be up for it, and it is a process, trust me. We are going to do this again, and we will continue to do this and profile your stories. And if you'd love to be part of this, let us know, and we will work with you and profile your stories, and we'd be very happy to have you right up here on stage with us. I think we're done.
I'm going to say a final thank you and say what's next.
Cool.
So I'll do that. I'll go straight into that now. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the evening. It's not over yet. So for those of us that are here, you can go upstairs and continue networking and hopefully meeting colleagues of old. I've seen some people I haven't seen here for a very long time, so I'm looking forward to talking to them in person myself. For those watching us on live stream, thank you for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed this evening as much as we all have, and look forward to speaking and to all of you, but also seeing you again in 2020. So good night, everybody.